Iran has fired over 1,000 missiles into the United Arab Emirates, and now the UAE is hitting back where it hurts. Morning Joe has learned that the Gulf country moved forward early this morning on its threat to freeze billions of dollars in Iranian assets. That's according to a top official in the region speaking with Joe. The UAE has long been a financial hub for Iran and its business interests seeking to avoid Western sanctions. The Wall Street Journal had reported that such a move by UAE officials would sever a key economic lifeline for Iran and cut off its access to foreign capital trade. Iran suffered a sharp economic downturn in recent months that was responsible for public demonstrations that led up to the American and Israeli attacks on that country.
David Ignatius, talk about the impact this could have on Iran. Also, just give us go into your reporter's notebook. Tell us where we are right now in this war a week in.
So, Joe, first, the economic impact of freezing the assets of Iran in the UAE, in Dubai in particular, will be significant. We have economic cross-currents until the Strait of Hormuz is reopened. The impact on the West, I have to underline, is going to be significant as well. So there are economic cross battles. Where is this war a week into the war? And the first thing you'd have to say is that the core U.S. and Israeli military campaign has been overwhelmingly successful. That they are taking Iran, its leadership, its missiles, its missile production facilities, its drone production facilities. They're taking all those down, and they now have essentially open operating ability in the skies over Tehran. They can use their big bombers now to drop very heavy payloads of ordnance on Iran. They now are entertaining the idea of bringing in the Iranian Kurds to form a separate front, arguably to make up for the lack of American boots on the ground. They're going to encourage these ethnic Iranians. A lot of people that I talk to who know Iran very well think this is a really bad idea. That the problem is as good as the Kurds are as fighters, as devoted as they are to their cause, this has the danger of splintering Iran. It would, for the Persian nationalists in Tehran, it's a reason to rally around the regime. And President Trump's offer to provide air cover for the Kurds, I'm just not sure that's strong enough. There's a big IRGC force on the border to protect that border and to keep them out. They don't have tanks. They don't have heavy weapons. So that's something that I wish President Trump had thought a little more carefully about. So where we are is we're heading into several more weeks at least of heavy bombardment. The regime so far has held together surprisingly well. But what I'm going to be looking for, Joe and Mika, is signs of fragmentation at the top, signs that some people are beginning to be the people that Donald Trump would talk to and try to make his deal and then declare a victory.
We will be continuing to watch that. It's going to be fascinating as it evolves. And as John Lemire cited yesterday, Politico report suggesting that people in the Pentagon think this war could go into the fall.
Boy, with that, joining us live from Dubai, MS Now reporter Josh Einiger. And Josh, what are you hearing there on the ground?
Well, Mika, this could be a good data point when it comes to what you and Joe are reporting this morning about the freezing of Iranian assets. You know, call this an act of defiance, call it the last gasps of a regime that's lost command and control. It's unclear what happened, but a few hours ago, another projectile was fired right in the direction of Dubai. And we had the experience of being on one of the first flights from North America into Dubai just a few hours ago. We were beginning our approach into the city of Dubai when we saw there's live TV on the plane, and I saw the update that there had been an alert that had just come in, and at that very moment we went into a holding pattern, as did, according to flight radar sites, all the other planes that were bound for Dubai at that moment. And we did a long turn, and then we made what appeared to be a fairly determined robust descent, and we ended up landing safely, and they obviously took the precautions that they were ready to take, and everybody was fine. We landed, we got to the gate, everybody turned on their phones, and all their emergency alert tones went off from that alert, we believe to have been about 30 minutes before. So I tell you this story because Dubai remains a city very much on edge. There was a volley of projectiles, maybe half a dozen, a little more missiles, and more than that of drones just yesterday. People are generally staying off the streets. Kids are taking classes over Zoom as if it were COVID. People are working from home. That said, people do have trust in the government. They've done a pretty good job, according to their own numbers that they've put out, in repelling the attacks that have been coming over the last several days over the course of this war. And so at least the expat community that we have spoken to are pretty much staying put. Not a huge amount of demand among the people we've heard from to get out of the country, at least not right now. Joe and Mika?
And again, Josh, Iran targeting a nation in the UAE that has been a safe harbor for its economic interests. Curious, to put it mildly. MS Now reporter Josh Einiger live from Dubai for us. Josh, thank you. Let's bring in former spokesperson for the United States mission to the UN, Hagar Shamali. She also worked at the National Security Council and at the Treasury Department. Hagar, always great to see you. We're talking, on the one hand, about the military campaign, the destructive element of this war. What about the day after problem, the day after question? President Trump seems to have said now that he would like a say in who leads Iran. Unclear how that would work exactly. This clearly is not Venezuela. What is your sense of what may come next inside Iran?
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult to see, and he's changed his tone a little bit on this, right? So his change in tone, actually, by the way, it started off, as we all remember, only a week ago with him calling Iranians to go to the streets, that now it's their chance to take over this regime. And now he seems to be somewhat possibly entertaining. Well, what if there is somebody left of the regime with whom he could work, kind of like the Delcy Rodriguez of the regime, of the Iranian regime? I find that very, very difficult, by the way, because it underestimates what this regime stands for and its ideological fanaticism. There is no such thing as a moderate in this regime. These are Islamists who believe in countering the West with Islamic extremism, who also believe, by the way, that their Imam Mahdi, will come with the utmost of chaos. So it's not, and this is the thing that I think is really fascinating, by the way, and I don't want to digress too far on this, but I do think it's important to understand where this regime would be in 5 to 10 years. And if you look at it from a bigger picture, how things are going to be, if you look over the last 2 years, the mistake that the Iranian regime made in allowing October 7 to go forward and the extent to which it's weakened now, especially with this successful campaign. So to get to your question is, if there is somebody left that the administration wants to work with, maybe, but that person is going to really have to be strong-armed into not pursuing nuclear programs, not supporting terrorist proxies and so on. I'm not sure the administration is going to enforce some kind of democratic reforms within the country, because I don't think that's high up on their priority list. It looks like the more likely outcome, even though I do think that that's going to be, obviously, to the 80% of the Iranians are not going to want that.
Hagar, you've said that this is a rare strategic opportunity in dealing with Iran, given that it has economic problems, a weakened military now because of the last week, especially a degraded nuclear program. The list goes on and on. So what is the opportunity, and what is the best case scenario here for not just the United States, but for its allies across the Gulf to seize that opportunity?
Yes. So what drove this, and I know that there have been numerous communications coming from the administration, but what really drove the urgency of this is the fact that the regime has never been at a weaker point. And this is a regime that has threatened us for nearly 50 years. So given that, and given the fact that the Iranian regime has only doubled down on its nefarious behavior since the end of the 12-day war last June, meaning even that didn't deter them from trying to retrieve elements of their nuclear program, saying it in their conversations with Steve Witkoff that they intended to continue, certainly doubling down on their support for terrorist proxies. In 2025 alone, they sent $1 billion to Hezbollah, whereas they have no money right now, showing that they are going to continue to be a thorn in our side. So when you have them at the weakest point ever and you own their skies, this is the opportunity that the United States and Israel are trying to seize. And I think it's important to understand that's why I talk about the regime's fanaticism and ideology, and why I talk about October 7, because with the way technology and AI is going, we cannot rest on our laurels and believe that these groups and rogue nations and authoritarian regimes that their threats are going to remain across the pond. They are going to grow, and that's the opportunity we seize to either completely obliterate their military capabilities. At the very least, that's going to happen, but hopefully toward a regime that would not pose a threat and would usher in some kind of transition at some point in the future.
Hagar, you're certainly right to underscore the widening front there, Lebanon, Israel, and Hezbollah exchanging violence. Want to get your take on something we briefly touched on a little while ago, which is these reports that the U.S., CIA, some other are trying to arm some of the Kurds in the region. Perhaps that they would stand in as some sort of ground force. Conflicting signals as to whether it's actually going to happen yet. What would your view of that be? Is that there seems to be it's a very divisive idea that it could lead to just further chaos, or do you think it could be successful?
Yeah, so I share David's view on arming the Kurds. I worry about it deeply because it just feels as though it's going to make a situation that is already precarious even more dangerous and unstable, and it could really cause divisions that we don't want to see within Iran. I will tell you, of course, the Kurds were a key partner in defeating ISIS. They were the key in defeating ISIS. And so I don't want to underestimate their strength and their abilities. And they did that because of the air cover that the coalition countries gave them. But this is the IRGC. It is not ISIS. It is a very large military. And even though we have significantly degraded their capabilities, the Kurds just don't have the same. I've heard a mix of views that if the CIA were to really back them, then that they could do this. But again, I'm not sure I see how it actually helps achieve the final goal other than to really devolve the situation into chaos. So I'm open to the idea, but I am actually really quite concerned.
All right, former spokesperson for the U.S. mission to the United Nations, Hagar Chemali, thank you very much for your insights this morning.
Great insights. And regarding the Kurds, I've got to tell you, I spoke with sources in the intel community who are very supportive of Donald Trump and have long been. And I've spoken to people in the intel community who are extraordinarily hostile to Donald Trump. They all agreed on two things, David Ignatius. Whether they were extraordinarily hostile to Donald Trump or whether they were extraordinarily supportive of Donald Trump. I heard two things yesterday, and I know you have too. I want you to underline them, though. One, the extraordinary military success that the United States in these early stages has achieved. And number two, their absolute fear and horror of the Kurds being used and actually creating, as one very pro-Trump intel source told me, we fought sectarian violence for 7 years in Iraq. We do not have that in Iran unless we march the Kurds in. And so I was struck. That was unifying. Where bringing the Kurds in would create an Iraqi problem where one currently does not exist.
Well, in the absence of a clear political strategy for Iran to introduce the one, really probably unwise political strategy that you could embrace toward greater fragmentation and I fear sectarianism would be a mistake. But the basic thing that you said, Joe, a week into this war, it is devastating a regime that has created so much turmoil and pain across the Middle East that we have to remind ourselves, if this war ended tomorrow, the Iranian missile program, which menaces Israel, now all the Gulf countries, essentially would be destroyed. If the war ended tomorrow, the Iranian nuclear program would essentially be destroyed. And if the war ended tomorrow, Iran's ability to meddle in countries around the region through the IRGC and the Quds Force, if not destroyed, would be extremely limited. So that's what's been largely accomplished in a week. It's a big deal. The Middle East is going to look different after this. What I worry about is, how do you build on the rubble? How do you build something that's stable and secure for Iranians and for the whole region after this is over?
And that was the question in Iraq. That was a question, obviously, in Libya. Question in Afghanistan. None of those conflicts that started very well ended well.
Huge question now.
Yeah.